Recording in progress. With that, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Carly Okamura, who will be taking over moderator duties from here. Take it away, Carly.
All right. Thank you, Paul, and thank you everyone for joining us. I am Carly, and I'm the Vice Chair in TCA, working with Paul and Christina. And we're very excited today. Oh, I've got an echo. If people could mute, that would be great until you're speaking. Thank you so much. Hopefully that wasn't just me hearing things. Yes, so today the discussion topic is youth taiko. So that's very exciting, really interesting area of the taiko world. So we're so happy to have our guests today and for you joining us. So we hope to have a great discussion. So we will start with the introduction of our panelists. So if I will call you out, and if you don't mind, panelists, saying the name of your group and a little bit about your group, when it was founded, and sort of the vision and mission of your group. So if you don't mind, we'll start with Tomomi Hongo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tomomi Hongo. So the two groups that I currently lead, the first one, which I've been doing for a very long time, they're called El Marino Rainbow Taiko, and it's basically an after-school program. My dad established it, I believe, 97? 96, I'll say late 90s, just to be safe. And I want to say it's the first after-school taiko program. So when I graduated from high school, which was a long time ago, my dad decided to move to South America. So he basically said, you need to take over. I said, okay. So from then on, I've been there since 2007. And then I've fortunately had additional instructors to help me, because before I was leading 4 classes on my own and with about 20 kids, so it was a lot. So now we also have a middle school class. And from then I started another group called LA Mugen Taiko, so just kind of continuing the youth taiko that my dad started in the late or early 80s. I'm not very good with dates, but he founded San Fernando Mugen Taiko. So I just kind of followed that path, and basically the members in LA Mugen started with El Marino. So what's really cool is, I get to work with these students for 10 years, and I get to see their growth from 2nd grade up until they reach high school and they graduate, and sometimes they play in collegiate groups. So yeah, those are 2 main groups that I lead.
Thank you. And Shinobu, would you go next, please?
Yeah, so I started Chibi Taiko. Chibi means everyone. 1993. And well, I had my daughter, who was at that time 6 years old, and she started asking me, when are you going to start teaching me taiko? So that's when kind of I started thinking about forming a kids group. And among our friends, there are about half a dozen to 10 kids in a similar age group. So I decided to kind of test out, how they will learn taiko. And before that, I was involved in Katari Taiko and Wasabi Taiko in Toronto and so forth. And I had a little bit of experience teaching adults, but never dealt with the kids, which is totally different. Anyway, so that's how I started. And, it was very struggle first 2-3 years, but, then well, that's how I started. And this year is our 30th anniversary. And anyway, went through many changes during that 30 years. Right now, it's probably 5th generation of members with us. And altogether, about 20 members right now. In the age group, it's youngest to do 8 years old, and the oldest is 35. who's a member as well as the instructors.
Thanks, Shinobu. And could you tell us where Chibi Taiko is located?
Located in Vancouver.
Vancouver, Canada.
Sorry, I forgot it.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right, and Tony, can you follow up, please?
I am Tony Jones with Zenshin Taiko. Zenshin Taiko was formed in 1999, and we currently have about 40 kids, ages 5 to 16. Kind of a young group. We had a bulk of older kids that aged out over the years, and we were left with this little baby boom gap that so now our oldest is 16, which is really interesting. Then the pandemic hit and all that stuff, so we didn't have great recruitment, but now we're getting back up to speed. We only have kids in the group. Only kids play. I don't know. I'll leave the rest for the questions.
And did you mention where you're located as well, Tony?
Oh, Maui, Hawaii.
Great, thank you. So for our guests in the audience, as we go through the discussion, if you have a question, please feel free to put it into the Zoom chat so that we can address that later and you don't have to remember it the whole time. And we'll have time for questions at the end. We actually did receive quite a few in advance. So if you did send one in via the form, you don't have to repeat it. And we'll get to it at the end. So yeah, let's dive in. I do have some questions, but panelists, if there's anything slightly off topic that you want to add, please feel free as well. We are here for your experiences and stories. So to begin with, Tony, since you went last, I'm going to ask you first this time. So when it comes to age range, did you set out to think, well, we're going to start with this specific age range, or did it just sort of happen naturally? And yeah, and that's the question.
Well, when we first started, there was a lot of interest, so I kind of limited to 7 and up. So the rule was the year you turn 7, because that would be like first graders, which, you know, I figured at least kids that can have a little bit more attention span. And then, over the years, I made some exceptions. I got one kid, one mother was bugging me. Finally, I said, yeah, bring him by, and forgot to ask how old the kid was. He was 3.5. So I'm like, well, you know, they'll hang in there for a while, and you know, like once the novelty wears off, and the kid would stay for the whole hour class and just play along. And I mean, he played whatever he wanted, but that was fine. But so now I'm kind of much more relaxed as far as an age group. So I just so last year I got a kid that was, the mom didn't even know how old this kid was. Oh yeah, he's 5 something. Okay, he's gonna be 6. He was 4, gonna be 5. So, but the kid is a monster. He's a natural. So at that young age, the you know, if they have some natural ability, it makes it a lot easier. If they're totally clueless, then they have fun, but it's a lot harder to work with. But yeah, I'm pretty like, whatever, bring them by.
Great. And Tomomi, your classes are fairly structured. Did you set out with a specific age range in mind? And if so, why?
So for El Marino, it was already structured. So my dad structured it where it was only from 2nd through 5th grade. And then within like a year or two after I took over the program, more kids wanted to continue Taiko, and there aren't a lot of youth groups. So then I added a middle school class. So a lot of them stick around 2 to 3 years. And once they go to high school, they either stop Taiko because they have extracurricular activities, or they would join Mugen. So in that way, it is structured now. And I also like recently extended the age range to 1st grade because I also believe at that age they're very capable. So now we go from like 1st grade up until I think right now 7th grade, and we have 3 classes. We just pump them up by like right now by grade. It's a little bit hard just because of COVID. We had to restructure a lot of things, but for the most part, it is by grade level. Mugen is basically middle school, high school, so that there's a little bit more of a flow. If younger kids do want to join, it is harder for me because the age range is like so wide. But El Marino is a good, starting point because it is very structured.
Great. And Shinobu, you mentioned a very large age range of your group members. Is there a minimum age they have to be to join?
Well, in the past, yes, I kind of tested from 5 years old, and I figured, well, basically, I decided not to do a babysitting, So having said, it's a grade 1, 7 years old or 8 years old. That's their kind of a youngest. Yeah. And so also I have a upper limit for the beginners, which is about 13 years old, because at the time that they get really good, they're already, the last year of high school, right? So they may leave, right? So that's the reason. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned you have a teacher who's 35. So he's a group member because he's a teacher?
No. Teacher means which teacher? Instructor. Yeah. So yeah, our group, that at the beginning, I expected, as soon as they finish high school, they will leave. And we have, several adult group in town. So I expected them to join those groups, right? But they didn't want to leave, So that's how it started. And so my plan kind of, changed to accommodate their needs, because, the group activity in my group is more like, it's really becomes friendship, it's kind of a social platform, right? Otherwise, that most of them are Japanese background or Asian background, and they wouldn't see those friends outside of school. So that's why they have a really strong kind of bonding, It's very interesting.
Oh, that's great. So Tony and Tomomi, is it the same case where there's other groups in the area where you can direct an older child, or do you just kind of let them do their thing and maybe they'll hang around?
Go ahead, Tomomi.
So usually, like, the kids who join Mugen stay up until they graduate high school, and some of them, like one member has stayed with me for a long time, and last summer 2 of them they graduated high school and then they finished their first year of college and they came back to perform for the LA Taiko Festival last year. But it is hard to cycle in students continuously, just because, like, no, Shinobu-san said, like, once they get really good, they graduate. Right? And so basically you have to start over again, right? So right now I'm in the process of making it more of a flow, because it is hard. And some of the students, Torrance is too far from Culver City. I'm like, it's not that far. But we're trying to figure out, to have this continuous flow of students, because it is hard. They reach a certain peak and then bye, good luck in college. Yeah.
Heartbreaking, yes.
How about you, Tony?
So thinking about Zenshin Daiko, like they all kind of graduate and leave the island. So we had a few play with other groups, like we had one play for Keniendo after high school. We had one play for Elise Jun Daiko. she went over to play, which is like the Kenny Endo retirement home of Taiko groups. We got one girl that graduated last year that she's at Stanford now. But as a whole, life takes over and they don't have time for Taiko at the level that they did at Zenshin Daiko. So, and a lot of groups are more social oriented. So, Zenshin Daiko is kind of performance oriented. So they perform a lot, and there's a lot of groups out there that aren't as active, I guess. So my thinking is it's kind of a different mentality when some other groups that might be available.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I wanted to add too. You sparked a thought.
Too
Uncle
late.
Tony.
Too late.
A lot of the kids who do graduate high school, like even in high school, I tell them there is a collegiate scene, right? So I do tell them you can join a collegiate group or you can start a collegiate group. So there's you don't necessarily have to have your Taiko career to be all done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some do go through that, in that way. And I have one student or one member, I should say, she decided to play Taiko more professionally. So she's in Taiko Project now, and she plays with a lot of groups, Thistle. For her, Taiko is life. So there's different avenues, but I want to say, yeah, I try to push them if they do want to go to college, right? Continue Taiko and collegiate, then you can make all these connections, right? And continue playing with, the younger generation. Oh.
That's great. And, the collegiate community is certainly something that TCA likes to uplift as well, to continue these young people's involvement with Taiko and how we can assist them. So thank you, youth groups, for starting them on their journey. Something all three of you have alluded to is the minimum age to join, and how if someone under grade 1 sneaks their way in, it can be kind of a challenge. So what is the strategy if you have someone younger than, say, age 7? Do you include them? Do you kind of let them do their thing? Do you try to instruct at the same level? Shinobu, what do you think?
Well, so how do you say it?
If you don't let them in, that's fine too.
Actually, yeah. So I have a waiting list, long waiting list.
Wow.
And yeah, so when we have an opening, we invite them. Yeah. So that's what I do.
So they can't sneak in. It's exclusive.
Right.
So they apply at birth and cross their fingers that by the time they're 7, they'll be on the top of your list.
Wow. Tomomi, do you have any strategies, or what happens?
That's hard. I'm also thinking about what is the kids' needs too. The younger the kids, the more active they are, right? But with Marino, I've extended it to first grade. Kindergarten, I feel like I would make that a separate class, just because behaviorally, social, emotionally, right? It's kinder from first grade. There's a big difference there. So ultimately, I always try to think I want to make sure that I set them up for success, right? So is this age group appropriate? Will they vibe okay? Maybe, I always think of that big picture, but I really haven't had a run into that challenge of having a really young kid wanting to join a group. I've taught preschool for 6 years, and I did do a little Taiko camp there, but it was easy because they were similar age range, right? But kudos to all of you doing from young to old, because I don't know, I don't know how to do that. That's something I still need to learn.
Great. Tony, what's your experience?
Like I said, initially, kind of like Shinobu, we had so many people. I stopped making a list. I said, contact me later on when we're ready to open, because the first couple of years I had sticky notes for a year, and I'm like, you know what? Just call me later. And so initially I was kind of just for reasons of being able to shut down people without feeling bad about it. Oh, sorry, you got to be 7, But what I learned is never underestimate the kids. So like if somebody really wants to come, I just let them come. It doesn't matter as long as they're toilet trained. I mean, I'll draw the line over there. But like I said, it's 3.5-year-old. They just sat through the whole thing, and of course, the kid quickly found out the best time to play is when everybody else stops, because then you can hear yourself. And the only problem I had with that was the mother kept trying to get the kid to stop playing while I was talking. And my feeling is like, he figured it out, man. Like everybody else is done. Now I'm going to play and I can hear everything. So I told the mom, don't worry about it. Let them play. And I'll just talk louder. And then of course they're playing what they want to play. And I tell the mom, because she's like, oh, you're disturbing the class. I said, no, you're making everybody else focus more on what they should be doing. So I didn't let that, like my feeling was like, let the kid play, eventually he'll get it. And so now I'm like, I really believe that all the kids have potential, and it's just given the opportunity. And sometimes, yeah, it's inconvenient, but the flip side of that is my worry is more about, for every 4-year-old that grabs the ball and runs with it, you're gonna burn out kids, because it might be too much at that age. So, but some kids are amazing.
Awesome.
Well, I want to add something here.
Yeah.
So also, that most of the time that they kind of approach me as to join, that's when that because of performance, right? And I often invite them to their practice, so they will understand what's involved. And most of the time they just become silent.
Yeah, because there is a certain amount of discipline involved, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I see. Kind of along those lines, if we think of the age range, we'll say up to 13, so 13 and younger, are there like behavior or attention span issues to hold the attention span for children that age? And how do you face those challenges? Tomomi, why don't you go first?
Wait, can I just add one thing? I realize is like everybody's thinking about the bottom age, but like Shinobu, initially I didn't want to take people that were older than like 13, just for the same reasons. It's like, it's going to take them 3 or 4 years to get up to speed. But then even that rule I ended up breaking after I had one mother that really eloquently put together an email saying how much her daughter wanted to do it. And so against all my rules, I said, okay. And the girl ended up to be awesome. One of the hardest working kids ever. And a really inspiration for me, as well as the other kids, to see somebody work that hard, to realizing that. And, she started off with the 6-7-year-olds, and she's, 14, a freshman in high school, and she had to play with all the small kids. And she just kept working her way out of it. And it's like, so even at that end now, I kind of like, you know what? You want to come. So sorry to interrupt that last question.
Tony, I think you just told all of us that you're a big softie, and that's the takeaway.
Yeah, I'm the softest guy they know, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Warm and soft.
Yes, so we're thinking about dealing with younger children and the attention span or behavior issues. So Tomomi, is this something you run up against, and do you have any strategies?
Yeah, even older kids too. So I guess I could start with the younger ones. So when I was doing Taiko or summer camp Taiko, even like my last year of preschool teaching, we did for graduation, I had them play Taiko. And I think working with kids in general, we all thrive in structure, right? And consistency. So I think with kids, all students of all ages, I think having structure and consistency is key, right? Especially with kids who are a little bit more hyperactive or anxious, you need to provide that structure so they know like what is coming up next. I did have a student, he worked with me for a long time. He graduated high school last year. He was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, so he was a neurodiverse learner. And for him, I had to prompt him a lot, like, hey, we're going to do this, right? But it took me a while to realize that if I provide a visual schedule and let him know when breaks are going to take place, right? Because he always asks me, Sensei, when's a break? Sensei, when's a break? So I'm thinking, he probably needs more breaks, right? And in general, we all need that brain break. So having a visualization of a schedule, that I feel like that has helped. I recently started working in a school where I teach Taiko all day, and it's classes from like 27 to like 44 kids with 9 drums. So it really pushed me to work on my class management skills. So within that, right, it's me versus like 27 kids, right? So a lot of them want to go straight and just hit on the drum, right? So instead of me saying, stay frozen, right? We have to replace that behavior of that urge of them wanting to hit something, right? So I'm like, okay, if you feel like you need to tap something, you could tap your legs, use the bocce and tap your legs, right? So they're still getting that energy out, but they can still listen to what's happening next, right? And the kids who decide not to listen, I straight up tell them, so you can't listen and talk at the same time. So if you choose to talk, right, that's on you, right? You got to ask your friend what's happening, because I'm not going to say it again, right? But with little ones, that same thing. If you need to tap your legs, and it's just very structured. And I try to implement a lot of scaffolding, but it took a long time to get there. I would say, like, working in that school with 44 kids, that was hard, but I learned a lot. So structure, routine, and having visualized schedules also help.
Wow, that's great advice. Thank you. Shinobu, any tips for attention span or behavior?
Yeah, so I went through all kinds of, experience. So basically, I set the kind of rule in the practice, right? So you cannot talk during the instruction. And if you have anything to say, you have to raise your hand, that kind of a rule. And also during the COVID period, something really happened. I don't know why, but anyway, I kind of incorporated meditation at the very beginning of the practice. Just sat for 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. That really helped of their behavior, particularly these boys. And yeah, so now I kind of stopped doing that. But later on, some kids said, I miss meditation. It's interesting. So that's something that you can use. What else? Oh yeah. So I give kind of a warning. If someone has a problem, then a second warning. Then basically you have to go outside of the place, sit, and wait till they get ready. So lot to do with what happened with the parents or friends and those things, right? And anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And Tony, how about yourself?
Early on, I realized there's no correlation between age and attention span. And it doesn't, age, attention span, maturity is all irrelevant. So, and, the whole ADHD thing, I swear that if they were diagnosing when I was young, I would have been the poster child. So I can relate to those kids. So, and I think, Tomomi, you ever stop by at one of our practices? Zenshin, the rule is chaos. We are not structured in the way that you would expect a Taiko group or any Japanese organization, especially, to be structured. And what I found out is the kids learn in their own way, at their own pace. They speak a language different. My biggest challenge is just shut up, because at first I'm like, I have a plan. I think you should do this, then that, and they come out and do things their own way, and I'm like, I wouldn't do it like that, but let's see what happens. And pretty soon it's like, holy shit, they're doing it. So it's like the first 3 or 4 years of Genshin Daiko was learning how to just let them learn in their own way. And just because us adults can't understand it doesn't mean it's wrong. So what would be viewed as from an outside, like every time Taiko people come and they visit, and a lot of people want to see what makes Zenshin tick, and afterwards we go out to dinner, and I go, what? You must wonder how we get anything done, yeah? And they're like, oh, well, they're trying to be politically correct. No, I just say it. I mean, seems like total chaos if you don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what's going on, but it works, so I just let it go. So I feel like letting the kids do things in their own way, they get a greater degree of ownership. And just because I can't understand it doesn't make it wrong.
I want to add to that, Uncle. I did see your practice. It was not chaotic. It was very empowering to see the kids lead the classes, right? They're teaching each other.
I wasn't napping when you were there, though, yeah?
No, you weren't napping. You were awake. You were watching. But to add to taking ownership, right? So like, if the kids want to talk, right? They want to socialize, right? Okay, you notice that in class, you use that as a strength in class. Okay, these kids like to talk, they have to come up with a pattern. Then they have to talk to each other, right? A lot of the older kids now I'm noticing have like social skills are a little bit harder because of COVID, right? So even saying, hi, how are you? What's your name? They're just like, so I have to really prompt them like, hi, ask them, what is your name, right? But for the kids who like to talk, right, that's their time. All right, this is 2 minutes, come up with the pattern. You guys got to collaborate, right? For the kids who like to, and the kids who don't like to talk, you push, you're also giving them an opportunity to be part of that process, right? And then the ones who are a little more hyperactive, right? Interestingly, I make them like the leader of the classroom, so that in a way, again, taking ownership, empowering them to learn, right? I have one kid who's super hyperactive in class, and I always tell him, all right, tell us, this kid, please, count us in so we can start, the song. And he's so focused when he does that because he has that sense of like responsibility, right? So instead of like shunning them for their behavior, you try to recognize what their strengths are, right? And bringing that, like verbalizing that to them and letting them use that. So yeah, empowering the students and just letting them do it. It's a little bit chaotic, but at the end, they have the ability to do it.
That's great. Great advice. Thinking about kind of this idea of leadership and ownership, as we all know, Taiko is not just learning music or learning whatever. There's a lot of soft skills and a lot of life skills that we can gain in our Taiko journey, even as adults. Thinking of the kids, do you purposely incorporate sort of soft skills such as leadership, communication, or interpersonal skills? Do you intentionally include it, like Tomomi was just telling us a little bit, or do you see how over their time with you in the group that they gain those sort of extra skills? Shinobu, do you have anything to tell us about this?
Okay, there are a couple of examples that, Chibi Taiko is a non-profit organization, and so we have board, right? And also we have parents and senior members monthly meetings. And so the older kids, they are encouraged to get involved so they can speak in a meeting situation. Or the one quite good example is that one of the eldest is the president of TV Taiko now. So anyway, that that's a really leadership kind of skill that they are developing, and also we do kind of mentor kind of a relationship between the younger ones to older ones, so that kind of thing happening. Yeah.
Awesome. Chibi for president.
Yes, but she's 35 years old.
Oh, right. Okay. Tony, how about your experiences? I think you're muted there, Tony. There you
Sorry.
go.
It's only like my 5th Zoom thing ever, so I don't even know how to push the button. Sorry, what was the question? I got
Thinking
lost
about
in Shinobu's comments.
the extra to Taiko's skills, like the skills that they can pick up as they grow in terms of leadership or communication or interpersonal growth, like do you purposely try to instill these values, or do you see it happening organically?
Not only purposely try to do it, but make Taiko secondary to those things. I mean, literally, my goal is not to make Taiko players, it's to empower the kids. Taiko is the result of everything else: leadership, commitment, sacrifice, teamwork. So the irony is, by not making Taiko the priority, you end up with good Taiko.
That's awesome. Tomo, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo Uncle Tony and Shimbu-san, I do I always think this to myself, like, do I trust my kids, right? That's where it all starts. With that, you have to think about, like, do I trust that they're capable, right? So once you have that down, I feel like there's a lot of possibilities. So with the soft skills and all of that, that really came into play within the last couple of years for me, just because, I was being a ECE teacher, and then I'm also in a graduate program to become a school psychologist. So I've learned why it's so important to teach these soft skills, right? So I try to, in most of my classes, encourage the kids to collaborate. So I put them in small groups, come up with a pattern together, get to know each other's names, right? And then there's some classes where some kids know songs, some kids don't. So the older kids have to teach the younger kids, which pushes the older kids to really understand, like, do I know the song? How does that pattern go again, right? So both age groups are learning. So there is that mentorship, right, of the older kids helping the younger kids. But at the high school level, we had the Youth Taiko Gathering. We didn't have it this year, but the last 2 years, I tried to have the high schoolers, take a leadership role if you want to help with building a website, or, things like that, where they can use it later in life, right? I always push them, like, you should do it. You should do it. It'll look good on your college resumes if you want to go to college, right? Because those things, those experiences, no one can take that away from them.
Great. So let's switch gears a little bit and think about what challenges that are unique to a youth group that you can think of. Tony's already nodding his head, so do you have anything?
Parents. The downside of having a kids group is you got to deal with parents. Most parents are awesome, but man, you get those that make me think of an early retirement, They just don't get it. And explaining to them that this is not about you or your kid, this is about the group. It's just a foreign concept. And they're always with the why, but, and I'm like, my bottom line is, shit, I ain't getting paid for this. I don't have to be politically correct. I'm not a state employee. So I just tell it like it is. So needless to say, people love me or hate me, because I'm like, maybe this is not the group for you. But yeah, parents, the kids, I don't care how maybe active or attention span deficits, or I don't care about that, because they're kids. They can do anything they want. They're kids. My job is to teach them. Maybe that's not appropriate, but they're kids. But parents, like, dude, you want an adult. Anyway, I can go on this subject for a while, so I'll stop.
I was thinking it might be a can of worms. I expected this might be the answer to the question, but Shinobu, do you have any thoughts about challenges for a youth taiko group or parents?
So, well, our parents are so far so good. And to keep kids' motivation high, that's one of the challenge. And particularly during the COVID, there were no performances, right? So of course, performance is one of the biggest motivation for the kids, because they want to show off what they can do. And anyway, so it's been my kind of one of the idea is that we have to have one big event a year or 2 events a year. So what I started doing during the COVID is that we created kind of mini recital ourselves, and inviting family, relatives, and friends, and that's why we started doing that twice a year. So this coming June, we are gonna have third, we call it Chibi Blast. Correct. So that's the title of our recital. And anyway, that's the third one that we are gonna have, and it's been quite good. And also, I'm kind of developing our, all the kids kind of skill to organize things, preparing the refreshment and so forth. And anyway, so that's one of the things that you can do. What else? Workshops, inviting some, there are a lot of, taiko players in town, so we can invite them, or we can have a, kind of exchange kind of things. Yeah, that's one of the things that to keep their motivation high. And another challenge is their schedules, right? Because they have outside of taiko, outside of school, they have a lot of things happening, right? Like birthdays, sleepovers, exams, and family gatherings and so forth that they have to do. And anyway, but we have a kind of a what do you say, quota to keep their membership alive, which is to attend 3 out of 4 practices. And so those are the things that our challenges.
Yeah, the challenge of keeping them motivated.
Yeah, that's a big.
Yeah, Tomomi, what is your experience with challenging situations?
Echoing everyone. I will say the commitment just more recently because of, once they get into high school, there's a lot of extracurricular activities. So just commitment and scheduling, right? And with that, parents, it's been okay. I want to say within the last couple of years, it has gotten a little bit harder just like communicating with parents, because not all of them like check their emails, right? And I'm a very stickler on, if you want to perform, you need to come to practice, right? So recently, some kids don't come to practice, right? This is, they don't come to practice, and they know that a show is coming up and the parents still expect them to play. And I'm like, sorry, they were not at the last practice before the gig. So, I might get some not so nice emails from the parents, but this is a life skill I'm trying to teach the kids. Like, if you want to be the starting five on the basketball team, you got to show up to practice. You're not starting five if you don't show up, right? And I straight up tell the kids that too. I was like, if you want to play, you got to come to practice, right? I get if you get sick, but if you don't show up without saying anything, like, that shows me you're not committed, right? So within the last couple of years, that has been one of the challenges, is the idea of commitment, right? Which is like hard for me to understand what the miscommunication there. But yeah, in terms of parents, is the communication, making sure that we're on the same page with under the umbrella of commitment.
Great, thank you, everyone. So in the time we have left, we're just going to move on to the questions that we've received from the registrants, because there actually are quite a few, which is great. I was hoping today to get to talk about teens and Taiko, but since we don't have time, that may have to be a whole other session, and it's a big topic too. So I'm going to move on to the questions, and we're going to try to do these a little bit lightning round. So if you have an opinion, just please feel free to speak up, and we'll try to get some answers for these. So to begin with, do you use for young children specialized equipment or size-wise different sizes of drums for the kids to use more comfortably? Just jump in, anyone.
Yes, Amarino, we have a lower hira daiko style one, drums, and for really young kids, I usually put the chu daiko like on a carpet or a blanket, just because the drum is too high for them. But usually just the chu daiko beta style.
Great. Anyone else? Specialized equipment?
Specialized.
Nope. Same as everyone else. That's fine.
Anybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Lance.
Yes. How's it going? Good. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story that I have happening. Is I'm a core member of Ride and Taiko from Kamloops, Canada, and we just started coming back since the COVID. But I lost quite a few core players, so we have 4 now. And here's the interesting story, is that I always wanted to know whether there's continuation of Ride and Taiko or not. So I do some really researching and try to really get into the community, because I know there's a bunch of Japanese ladies that have been in Canada for 25 years in Kamloops, but they never played Taiko, or they weren't allowed to play Taiko in Japan. So they knew the art a long time ago, same as their kids. And so now I've got these 4, actually I've got 7 of these Japanese ladies that are originally born in Japan, moved up to Canada 25 years ago, all playing in my group now. And they are very well, they have a very good skill set, because they're around Taiko every day, right?
Yeah.
So now their kids are interested. So what's happened is we've never had the opportunity of having somebody to teach. I couldn't teach it because I've got too much going on. Like, I'm the artistic director and I'm marketing and do all the rest of the stuff. And so I've was always interested. There's always kids coming up, but we didn't have the help to do it. So now these Japanese ladies, even though they're beginners of like 7 months now, 7 months, they've took on the the leadership role of teaching a Chibi Taiko, a children's class. And so these kids, majority of them, except for 2 or 3 of them, are the Japanese mothers. So they already have a skill set. It's a gift to them, right? I can see it because I've been to 3 of them, and I can see where kids get it and kids don't get it, right? And so what I'm trying to tell the ladies is, how do you get it so that the kids that don't get it, or they don't have no framework of being, taking music of some other thing, or the mother being a musician, that stuff, because that some kind of stems down, is what I think. And then how do we get it so that it's all still supposed to be one group, right? And the other big concern is what I've saw going into some of these classes that I've been kind of just being in the background and getting some notes, is that parents. So we have a problem with parents, right? I think when you're trying to teach a class, I think the parents have to be kind of not in the room. Because the reason why I see it is that some of the kids just don't give you 100% dedication to the sensei who's teaching, or the parents say their 2 cents worth, and the class gets a little bit out of proportion until it should be the sensei that's doing everything, right? So I think, I don't know, that's something that's probably you guys can answer, but I think that if the parents drop off all the kids, and like you said, you don't want to be a babysitter, so there has to be a certain age group, but you probably have 100% concentration. Same as judo, right? Judo instructors, they don't like to have their parents around because they don't give you 100% effort there, and they don't listen to the sensei as much. Agree? Disagree?
All right, so it sounds like there's 2 questions. So first question is, are parents allowed to watch? How do you get them out if they're being distracting? Does anyone want to speak on that first? Looks like Tony's coming on.
Well, he's going to speak up.
Yeah. Okay.
Parents don't bother me. You like watch. I'm not gonna tell any parent that they cannot be there. So if they want to stay, they can stay. But yeah, I just tell the kids straight off, whatever you do, don't let your parents teach you, because it only looks easy. And after a while, the parents, they're like, and it's probably the parents that want to add their 2 cents, but if you don't give them the opportunity, they get bored and they stop coming.
Yeah, they don't want to, you don't want them to interfere. I mean, they could be on the sidelines and watching that stuff, which is great. Maybe they should be at the back of the room instead of the front, or in the center where the kids actually see the parents, right? Because I think the kids also will be to the point where, you know what, I'm going to try as hard as I can because my parents here. Well, my parents are not, they're in the background, and I might not focus much. But I'm thinking, especially these ladies that are taking on this teaching role, and they're learning themselves still, where's the boundary, right? And they're all friends. So all these friends, all parents, and all the kids are in the Chibi Taiko group, right? So
it sounds like the other question was, if you have a group of kids that start together and some progress at a different rate than the others, how can you keep them all together and have fun?
yeah, or how do you do it so that you do not put them into a different group, right?
Yeah,
you want
so you can keep one.
Okay, but you don't have the total skill, right? Or you don't have the commitment that's showing up to practices. Where's that fine line where you say, you know what, but you still have to get this group kind to be a team. How do we do it so there's no animosity, right? Between parents, between kids, and between just the kids itself.
Yeah, sounds tough. Shinobu, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, yeah, my group, I don't allow parents to be in the same room. They have to go. Wow. So that's one thing. Actually, the COVID really changed the situation, because during the COVID, parents wanted to be in the room to watch how we teach, and anyway, so now it's over the period. I'm so glad. And then, and so about the, the learning speed, that among the kids, that's always difficult, right? And I had, it's very difficult. But so right now, I have that support from senior members. So 2 of them are always with me. So they pull out the slower ones outside and give them a little bit of focus so that they can catch up to the rest of the group. But all days I didn't have that luxury, So always kind of in between, middle ground. That's where my kind of the focus was, and it is how do you say it? It's a there is no straight answer to that challenge, But you have to be always give kind of a positive, comments, right? Now, particularly nowadays, anyway, Tomomi.
Okay, so the two
insight.
well, so for the parents, same, like for El Marino, parents do watch, and I don't really see the difference between the parents being there and not there in terms of the kids' behavior. I think if you don't want the parents in the room, I think that needs to be a clear expectation for when the kids do join. Like, this is our philosophy as, what the group, right? That way you're not having to like deal with it, later on. And if they do say something, like, remember, we had this expectation, maybe like writing out a contract in a way, like, class rules and all of that, and putting that there, like, parents are not expected to, be part of the class. That way you're preventing, right, some challenges in the future. In terms of the learning speeds, I think it's important to know, like, understand the kids' perspective. Like, what do they want out of it, right? Do they want to just learn or do they just want to have fun, right? Or do they really want to learn the technique? And I think motorcycle. Shinobu-san made a good point. Maybe breaking it into smaller groups, right? Like, maybe have not a focus group, but like the kids who are having a harder time, make a smaller group and spend like 5 minutes focusing on a couple of lines of a song, right? That way they're in smaller pods. It's a smaller, more intimate setting, right? And it's not as like daunting when you're like in a big group, right? So that's one idea. And you could do it as a whole class collective, right? Okay, we're going to spend the next 10 minutes. These 4 people are going to help, we're going to do this. These 4 people are going to do this, and we're going to come back and reconvene and, do all the lines together. That way, you're giving them another way to, access that curriculum, the song or whatever, that's trying to be taught. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Lance, for the questions. That's great. We are at time, but I do want to get to Michael's question, as Michael is also on the call. So I hope everyone doesn't mind if we stay over a few minutes. And thank you so much for your patience. And here's Michael now. So the questions I see is, for the youth group, do you need special insurance or a license to teach children at a school? And Michael, are you located in the US?
Yes, hello everyone. This is a really interesting conversation. Thank you.
So
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, so perhaps we could just zoom in on Tomomi to answer this question, as she'll have the most local information. Maybe not.
So for Mugen, I do have like a general liability insurance, but in terms of little kids, they're like El Marino is already part of a school program. So we just kind of fall into it's called Advocates for Learning, but it's like basically a nonprofit led by parents. So we just kind of fall into their insurance. But Mugen, I do have a separate general liability insurance to cover injuries and stuff. And I think you pay like once a year or something like that. Yeah.
Great. And speaking of schools, Michael also asked, do you recommend trying to get the school to finance the workshop or the parents directly? Michael, perhaps could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Well, I'm wanting to create a Taiko workshop for kids in schools, and I'm just wondering if you approach the principal or the PTA and have the school hire it as a kind of an educational system, or you just ask the schools, I want to do this after school program, will you allow me a space and advertise to the students? And then if the kids are interested, then the parents sign them up for it directly. It's more of an after school enrichment program.
Yeah, does anyone have experience with the schools? Christina has a hand.
Yeah, I have these questions really sing to my heart because I look at like more of the business and the administrative needs of the Taiko art form often within my own group. So I will say thank you all from the different parts of the world that you're joining us. Of course, you're going to want to check the local standards and regulations and expectations and legal requirements for any business related to where you're located. But generally with fundraising, it is going to be much easier to get into a school with a free program to them versus them having to do any additional work or fundraising. Educators, by and large, are strapped to the hilt already for their time. So saying, hey, this is a great program that would benefit your kids, but you've got to add another like 20 hours to do this grant with me to get it funded, they're not going to be on board for it. However, you can reduce costs to parents, especially if it's in an underserved community, by seeking out partnerships externally through like a fiscal sponsor or some other nonprofit that is education or adjacent to the school district itself.
Oh.
I recommend reaching out to the superintendent of that school district or that area to get a flavor of which direction they have a stronger case to get a new program launched. And that's the direction that you probably should go. As far as insurance and licensure goes, anytime, at least in the United States, and typically in most provinces in Canada, if you're trying to start a new business that's dealing with children, look to what the local Chamber of Commerce advises you to do for licensure and insurance requirements as it relates to, like, compare it to a ballet program, because that tends to translate easier for non-Taiko folks to understand the type of work that you'll be doing like on the ground with the kids. And so those are just kind of legal businessy advice. This type of stuff is also advice that we freely offer here at TCA. You can email us at any time at info@, and we can give you some more regionally specific resources in your area, at least as it applies in North America, not so much internationally beyond that, but great question.
Thanks, Christina. And yeah, just I'll echo the plug to TCA's resources. We want nothing more but to share them with you, so please never hesitate to contact the info@ address. All right, final question is, I'm gonna change Michael's question a little bit, is how do you schedule your classes, and would you recommend using an online scheduler? So Michael, is this like for the people to sign up on, or what exactly do you mean?
Right. I mean, as I was researching it, I saw there's I think one is called School HQ, or another one's like Lensing, I forget, where people can sign up for the classes online. Everything gets scheduled. You have a kind of a record of what children are attending, what days, and if those classes were paid for, or I don't know, it seems like it's organized, that there are different companies that do that. And I was wondering if you guys have any experience with that, or if you just do it yourself, or I'm totally new at this. So
yeah, so thoughts, how do you organize your schedule? Christina has a hand if no one else is
I
jumping
feel
in.
like such a nerd at the end of the call, y'all. I'm so sorry. Software as a service, SaaS, right, is on the rise generally for most things to be automated online. And this is cloud or internet-based stuff. There are tons of providers that do service and scheduling things for dance studios, martial arts dojos, fitness centers that are small scale or mom and pop. The best thing that I would recommend you do, because at TCA we can't officially like endorse one of those as a nonprofit, is to do your research with Consumer Reports and find out which features specifically you're going to want out of that service. So do you want the automated scheduling, or do you want like mass push notifications rather than writing emails to a whole group of parents? You can just do it from your phone while you're running about. Make that be your wish list, and then I think it will inform which one of those providers might make the most sense for you to purchase or use for your group. Because you know, we learn this all the time at TCA. I'll use, like, for NATCR, our scheduling software that we use is called Sked. And that was after vetting at least a dozen similar events portals to find the one that was going to suit our needs best. So there, you know, and as you can see from our lovely speakers today, and thank you again for your time and your expertise, there's no one size fits all for any one Taiko group. We all have different situations where we're at, different you know, student bases and different performance desires too. So I think all of that informs what you're looking for, Michael. So my big answer is it depends. Sorry.
Great. Okay, well, we didn't get to nearly all the things on my list, so this tells me we need a lot more sessions on Youth Taiko. But thank you to this group today for starting us on the journey. It was really interesting and really insightful. I love your takeaway experiences from some really long-lived youth groups. It's amazing the years that these ones started. So please do refer back to the social media post to check the groups of these fine folks and follow up with their activities. Otherwise, panelists, thank you again so much for your time. This is wonderful. And thank you, guests, for joining us. And I think we will call that session to close. So panelists, if you have anything to ask TCA, please stick around afterwards. But otherwise, please enjoy the rest of the weekend, everyone. And thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
programs.